Hi, welcome to Actual Spinster. My name is Anna Marie, and today I wanted to show you books on my TBR from 1900 and 1910, so as in the first and the second decade of the 1900s. There aren't like super many books to show, and also they're like very specific and kind of random at points, but I just thought it would be interesting. Last year, I guess I became like particularly interested in like trying to maybe read some like 1910 stuff, especially things that are maybe like not about or are kind of like antagonistic to the First World War, because I do feel like I have read some things from like the 1910s, but I feel like most of them are like war poetry, for example. And I'm also just interested in the 1900s because like I was just a bit like, why do I say it like that? Because obviously I'm interested in history in the past, and 1900s is also in the past, you know. But obviously like in terms of the Victorian era, which is where my like focus to some degrees lies, especially in the like latter part of the Victorian era, the like 1900s, that first decade is also obviously quite interesting because, you know, it sort of isn't Victorian technically, but it also like, it's not like when these like eras or like kings or queens who like we used in at least like British history to like mark particular time periods, like when they die, it's not like everything immediately changes and the status quo is completely different and the, you know, cultural preoccupations or the literary forms are just completely changed. And so like I think, yeah, I'm just like obviously intrigued from a Victorian perspective, but also just general. This is like a real natter, like I've been you know, whatever. The point is, this is kind of a random selection of books, but I think I'm interested in them and that I guess is the reigning theme of why they're on my TBR, which is really the same reason as to why like any book is on my TBR, I guess. Maybe sometimes it's not a book that's like particularly interesting, but I just feel like I have to read it, but I try not to do that because that kind of takes the fun out of reading, although sometimes I guess you do have to do that. Anyway, a lot of preamble. I've also just been like struggling, we're gonna keep going. I've also just been like struggling to read. At the moment, like I've just finished like one sort of novella recently. I don't know when I'll post this video, but yeah, it's not been a great time from a reading perspective, and also it has been kind of difficult even if I had some nice time more recently, but especially in terms of just like having the capacity to read, and especially like read things that like I haven't read before, or that are like more challenging. I've just not been doing that. So I also thought like this was a way to engage with, yeah, my books and my reading without having to have read anything. That's the concept of a TBR, which we all know. Okay, I really don't have like very many at all from the 1900s, which I do feel like, am I missing some? I don't think I am, but I guess I'll like insert if I have, and yeah, but the two from the 1900s are just these two, which are by the same author in the same series, and I had really hoped that this first one of it would not be on this TBR, but I just, because I wanted to read it last year and I just like never got to it. I haven't really tried to get it to it this year. I mean, like it's just been a bit tough reading wise, and so I've just been like honestly just reading like whatever, like but I do still hope to read it soon. Anyway, the point is, that is Claudine at School by Colette, and then this is I'm not actually sure if it is the second one or if it's the third one, but this is Claudine Married, also by Colette. This translation is by Antonia White. Oh, and this one is also Antonia White. So yeah, this book is from 1900 and this is from 1902. And yeah, they're obviously in the like Claudine series. I've never read any Colette. I don't think so, not yet. I do have another Colette book on my TBR, but it's from the 1930s. It's this one, The Pure and the Impure, which I do really also want to get to. Honestly, that book has been on my TBR for ages. Also, I hope we can all appreciate my hand knit jumper. Anyway, and so this, you know, follows like a girl called Claudine at school, where she's, I believe, a very rebellious student at school. I'm just really intrigued to read it. I kind of hate this cover, to be honest, but I think the other covers are also bad. I mean, I like this one, I think. It's at least better, I think. But anyway, yeah, and then there's two others in the series. There's at least one called, maybe it's Claudine and Annie, and then another one called Claudine in Paris. I think that's maybe the second one, and then this one's the third, and then Claudine and Annie is maybe the last one, but I could be wrong. Yeah, I would love to read this one soonish, but we'll see. So then the rest of the books are from the 1910s. which I honestly really hadn't realised, but there we go, until I like organised them chronologically. Okay, actually we do have another that is from the 1900s, or has some from the 1900s. This is a short story collection, so not all of them are from the 1900s. Or yeah, and I think they go into the 1920s too, but there's some from the 1910s as well, or like, yeah. But basically this is the collected short stories of E.M. Forster, and in particular there's one I'd really like to read called The Machine Stops, which is this like science fiction short story that he wrote in, I think, 1909, or like that's when it was published. So that's definitely kind of on this TBR grouping. And then it looks like the stories in this book, all of them were written before 1914 or like the First World War is what it's saying on the back, and then published in 2 volumes. So The Celestial Omnibus was published in 1911 and The Eternal Moment in 1928. I don't think this actually marks like which were in which volume, but from that I guess technically these were all written in the 1910s or before, and certainly before 1928 when The Eternal Moment came out, but I don't know. But I'm not like super into like reading the whole of this short story collection. I think I just want to read the ones that I'm most interested in, which does include The Celestial Omnibus, and yeah, obviously like I said, The Machine Stops, and then maybe others if I'm like particularly drawn to it. But I think if I just read those 2, then I'd be most interested. I also might read The Eternal Moment because that'd be kind of interesting because it named the other volume of the short stories. But yeah, we'll see. Okay. Then we have Willa Cather's O Pioneers, which I think was from 1913. It's, I always forget if it's the first or the middle or whatever in the like the Great Plains trilogy, I think is what it's called. Oh, the Prairie trilogy. It looks like it was the first in the Prairie trilogy, which includes The Song of the Lark and My Antonia. And I've read My Antonia, which was from 1918, I think. And that was like a really intriguing, if quite like challenging and like difficult novel. And it just made me really interested to read more Willa Cather. I think she is quite a fascinating person in terms of gender nonconformity, I guess, in particular. And like I definitely felt that My Antonia had some really interesting explorations of gender nonconformity in it, and like the characters in particular, and Antonia in particular was just like really fascinating. And I think she does a similar kind of like, I think I was reading just some like queer theory about some of her work, and I think in all 3 of the Prairie trilogy books she has like a main character that's a woman who has a like easily masculinized name, or like a masculine potentially name. Like I think is Alexandra in this one. Yeah, so there's Alexandra in this one, there's Antonia in that one that I read, and then I don't know in the Song of the Lark or whatever it was called. But yeah, just kind of interesting. I think like the racial politics of Cather's novel are where they're not necessarily like the least interesting, but the most kind of difficult to engage with because they are like bad, I would say. Like I personally found the ones in My Antonia quite difficult because they are like historical fiction of a particular time. They're not like super pre the times when they were written, although maybe is this in the 1870s, but I remember My Antonia I think is the 1890s or so, and it represents the land of like Nebraska as being like this sort of empty plain in a way that like just erases the living and vital reality of like indigenous people who were there. And I think that's bad, and I think that's very like unethical in terms of like historical fiction practices, to be honest. But yeah, you know, so like they're not sort of like wholehearted like recommendations, but they're certainly like intriguing books with quite a lot of like depth to them in terms of the like social realities they're trying to explore and or like push against, like especially in terms of those like gendered norms, I guess, gender norms. Yeah, that's how you say that. Anyway, that was enough nattering about that one. Okay, then we have a book that I bought recently, and honestly, like I said, I've been having kind of a bad time, and I just sort of like at one point was like, I'm just gonna buy this book. It did seem like interesting, like it's not like I'm not interested in it, but I feel like normally when I buy books I do tend to like think about them more and just like decide I'm gonna try and find them, or like, you know, do a bit of tracking down stuff, which also gives me time to like decide if I want to get them or not. Whereas like with this, it was more just like I have been wanting to like try and pick up some of the books from Persephone Books, which is the publisher of these of this, and I just saw this and was like, oh, it's from the 1910s and I'm interested in novels from the 1910s. So this is A Lady and Her Husband by Amber Reeves, and I think what drew me to it is that yeah, like She, I think, was a kind of socialisty person. She was clearly involved in like women's work and women's labour. Next up we have a Rose Macaulay book. This does have writing from like after the 1910s, but specifically it has Non-Combatants and Others, which was published in 1916, which is like an anti-war novel. It says it was the first anti-war novel to be published in the UK during the First World War, which is interesting. Last year I read Potterism by Rose Macaulay, and that got me interested in picking up more of her work, and you'll see another one of hers later. But yeah, I just am intrigued, like I said, by this writer, and she does tend to write quite a lot, I think, about journalism, because she was like a journalist. She was part of the journalistic landscape, and you can tell that with Potterism, because the central kind of preoccupation of the book, or one of them, is about the construction of news and like newspapers as producing a kind of reality that is not real and based off of potentially like in Potterism's case, like anti-Semitism. So yeah, I'd be interested to read that one. Then we have Regiment of Women by Clemence Dane, which is a like sapphic novel. I don't really want to read the back. I just feel like they're just constantly putting way too much. But I think it's one of those books that's quite kind of seminal in terms of shaping like literary explorations of lesbian like awakening and like lesbian school stories in particular. I mean, kind of interesting to maybe read Claudine at school and then also this kind of relatedly. I don't know how much overlap, but I think, anyway, the point is, I think it's not going to be a happy novel. And this is from 1917, did I say that? But I'm really intrigued to get to it. Like, yeah, obsessive friendships lead to tragedy. Yeah, it's like about, I think, a relationship, an obsessive and potentially bad, but definitely like clearly like lesbian-y relationship between Claire Hartill, who's a commanding educator at a private all-girls boarding school, and Alwyn Durand, a 19-year-old teacher with no formal training. And there is also, I think, a third kind of orbiting person who is a student called Louise. I also read Olivia by Dorothy Strachey last year, which is maybe like 30 years after this was published, but I do feel like that was one of the things that kind of pushed me to like finally get to this, because I had heard people talk about it and talk about novels like these in a kind of similar grouping, and also A Sunless Heart by Edith Johnstone. But anyway, I talked about that when I think read this, but this one also has a kind of like potential but like also tense relationship between two women who are sort of in a power position above a group of girl students, and then a girl student kind of comes in and like somewhat disrupts or like counterbalances that relationship there. Anyway, it'd be good to just like actually have my own experience reading this, as opposed to kind of like interpreting it through what other people say and, you know, what I've heard in terms of like when you're trying to find like older lesbian literature, you know. Okay, and then finally we've got another Rose Macaulay, and that's What Not, a prophetic comedy. This I have put on my spring TBR. Depending on when you see this, I guess it will seem more or less like I failed. I could not fail, like spring is technically not over right now, I would say, but we'll see. But yeah, so this was published in 1918, and like I said, I've talked a lot about it, but I do really want to read it. I think will try to read it before I read the other Rose Macaulay on this little TBR, just because like it's the one I've wanted to check out the most from her, and it has a great cover. Definitely let me know if you've read any of these books and if I should like prioritize them, or if you have any books from 1900 or 1910, or like, you know, the 1900s and the 1910s, the first 2 decades of the 1900s, that you would like to recommend me, then please do. Yeah, I really am hoping to read Claudine at school sometime soon, and also What Not, and also the others, obviously, of course. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a lovely day when you're watching this, and I will talk to you when I next talk to you.